Hello and welcome to today's video. This is my April wrap up and I'm going to talk to you about all the books that I read during April. In April I read a total of 21 books, which was also 6,116 pages. So a hell of a lot, and being perfectly honest, I don't know how it happened. I really don't. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel like a great reading month even whilst it was going on. I haven't felt like I had the best reading, but looking back it was pretty decent. I just don't know what's going on, basically. So I figured I will quickly give you a few quick stats and then I will go through the books and just give you like a quick 30-second to 1 minute what I thought of it and my rating, and we'll just move on and we'll do each book quickly because there's too many books. Honestly, probably too many for me to converse about, unless I want this video to be like over an hour. So we're going to go for quick and snappy for every single one. In terms of ratings, I gave 1 2.5 star, 4 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 9 4 stars, 1 4.5 and 4 5 stars. So really solidly decent reading month. 7 of the books I read physically, 3 audio, 8 ebook and 3 mixed media. In terms of genre, I read a lot of genres. Again, don't really know how, but I read biography, climate, fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, fantasy romance, cozy fantasy, poetry, non-fiction, magical realism, romance, mystery and horror. The biggest ones of those are fantasy romance at 6 books and fantasy at 5 books. So that's like the main part that I've been reading. In terms of age category, I read over half adult books, 3 young adult, 6 new adult and I think 1 middle grade. So those are all the little stats. Let's just get into it. I'm just going to do this in order of how I read them. So first book I read was Kusama. We were going to the Infinity Mirror Rooms exhibition before it closed down in London, and I really wanted just a bit of background knowledge before going, and this is a very cute, very simple graphic biography about the artist's life, and I'm really glad I read it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was good, I thought it was decent, I thought it gave me a good overview, and it was a very good basic insight as an introductory book. I'm really happy I read it. I'm really glad I read it. I don't know how much of this is like great because I've never read anything else. The author does have 2 autobiographies, so at some point I'm going to read those and I guess I'll figure out if I still feel like this is a 3.5 or lower or higher. But for right now, it was really good for the only biographical like content that I've read. I'm really happy I read it before going, and I had a really great time there, and I'm really glad that I read this first and I had that base knowledge. So 3.5 stars. Then I read Fauna. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. Unfortunately, this one just was not for me. I don't think I enjoyed the actual writing style, and none of the different parts of the story did it for me either, unfortunately. Every chapter felt jarring, like not like they didn't completely flow from one to the next, but they were meant to have like some interlinks, and it just felt jarring. I didn't like it. And then on top of that, the book just had a lot of things that I like personally, not on like a it was bad book as in like it was bad for me because of things I personally dislike things in it as well. I'm not going to say any of them because it doesn't have anything going into it, but I will say if you are interested in reading this, like it is interesting, like it's a climate fiction book, it could be interesting if you like the writing style. I don't see any reason why other people might not like it, but I would try and find some trigger warnings online because I was shocked that there were quite a few things in here and no trigger warnings anywhere. So yeah, that was that one. Then I read Grayson. This was actually a reread for me. I had read it before, but this time I read it and I annotated all the way through and took a lot of notes, and I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. It was great. And honestly, that's all I'm going to say about it. If you want to know more about what me and my boyfriend thought of Grayson, you can click on the link up here and that will take you to our book club discussion for the book where we talk a lot more about it. But yeah, I really liked it. I'm definitely going to continue on rereading the series to be able to pick up the 5th book, which is the one that I've never read before. Then I read Archangel's Enigma. I always really like this series. It's like urban fantasy but also fantasy romancy. I really like it. I think it works really good. I gave this 4.5 stars. It wasn't like perfect for me, but I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the characters that we follow in this one. In this one we see NASA and Andromeda. NASA we've seen before in books, but Andromeda we haven't, and it worked really well. Obviously I can't tell you much about this, well maybe not obviously if you've never heard of this series, but this is like book 7 I believe in the series, so can't tell you the plot, can't tell you anything like that, but the first book, like the plot just keeps adding, even though we're seeing it from different characters' perspectives. We are still moving through time and we are still getting new plot, and it is quite interesting. Occasionally we do get a book that has perspectives that we've read from before, and it's very interesting to see. What I did find interesting in this one, at the end of the previous book there was an event that happened that seemed like quite a big event for the people whose perspective we're in the previous book, but then for the people we're following in this book, like that event was mentioned as like a, oh yeah, and that thing's happening, but like it wasn't a big thing. And I thought that was like really interesting to see that juxtaposition between, depending on whose point of view you get in, how important something that's happening is. Then I read a arc that I got through NetGalley called To Charm a Dark Prince. I gave it 3 stars. It was a fantasy romance. It was fun. And honestly, up until the last 15%, I probably could have given it 4 stars. Like, I was enjoying it. The pacing just changed in that last kind of 15-20%, and it changed to a pace that didn't really make sense for where we've been seeing these characters. I'm not sure if this one is going to be a longer series or not, but it kind of felt like if the pacing hadn't been increased and we'd just seen more character and relationship development further on, then it would have felt more believable. I don't know, like it's fantasy, it doesn't need to be believable, I get that, but it just didn't really work for me. But I did like both our main characters, and I liked having both their point of views, and I found quite a few things this interesting. There's quite a bit of like metal work in this one, and I found that part of it really interesting. We didn't see a lot of it. I'm hoping we get to in the next book. I know that is going to be a second book, I just don't know if there's going to be more than that. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I will probably read the next book, but there definitely seem to be some pacing issues and just some things that didn't work perfectly. Then 5 stars was Garlic and the Witch. This is the second book in the Garlic duology, and it was great, honestly. Let me find a page. Here we go. So that's the sort of style that you can expect in the book. It's very cute, very like whimsical, and it was a great time. In this one we see Garlic going on another adventure and learning more about her life and learning more about what's going on, and maybe facing a different type of adventure that is life itself. If you enjoyed the first one of this, which was Garlic and the Vampire, I'd really recommend reading this one. I do think it adds to the first book very nicely, and it makes sense that the route that this one goes in. I really love the graphic novel. I really like cozy graphic novels, and this definitely had that going for it, and I love the art style in this as well. Then I'm not sure how I heard of the next book. Honestly, I really don't know, but I ended up reading a book called Court of Dragons and Crowns. First book in a series, and I enjoyed it. It was really interesting. It had a competition element. It's a fantasy romance, a human getting abducted essentially by these like dragon shifters to compete in a competition to marry them. She doesn't want to marry them. I don't know, it was very, very interesting. I don't think it went into that much detail. I would have liked a bit more detail as to how things were actually working, but I did enjoy it overall, and I enjoyed our main character and like being in that viewpoint of our main character, and the competition was pretty good as well. It took a few twists and turns that I wasn't 100% expecting, so yeah, 3.5 stars for that one. I liked it enough that straight after it I picked up book 2. Book 2 I did enjoy. I gave it 3 stars, but it had quite a repetitive plot, like the plot that happened in book 1. You know, we're in a different place doing a different thing, but we've got the same characters and we've got another competition style element, and it just didn't really work. I don't know, like I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. Like it wasn't bad. I will probably continue on with this series. I think there's 4 books in it maybe, but I don't know, book 2 just didn't pull me in. I like the character development, but that was about it in book 2, unfortunately. Then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart. I gave this 4 stars, and I'm really, really glad that I read it. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like this series. I was a bit worried, but I finished Caraval trilogy a couple of months ago. I read the final one, finale, and I was like, I do want to give this a go. And then one day I was at the library and I hadn't got a book with me, and I was waiting around, and I saw this on the shelf and I was like, let's pick it up, read the first little bit, and I was hooked. So when I got home I found it off my actual shelves and continued reading it. I liked it. I liked our main character Evangeline. I found her very interesting to follow. I like the little sprinkling and tidbitty bit from the Caraval series and seeing some of those characters. I think this takes place at least a few months after the Caraval series ends, but it could only be, it could be less than that, it could be less, but I think a few months is kind of where this picks up. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I liked getting to see the different part of the world as well, because this is set in a different part of the world once we get going. I will say we don't get to like that part of the world until about, I don't know, chapter, I'm gonna guess around 8. And at first when things were being mentioned, I always like refer back to the map in the front of the book, and I was like, these places being mentioned aren't matching up, but we did get there. So yeah, don't let that confuse you. But yeah, I really did enjoy it, and I will continue on with the series. I think it's a really solid YA series, and the fantasy was interesting, and honestly, like, I just want to learn more. Like, I feel like we've got some very interesting characters in this one who I would like to learn more about, so I'm hoping and presuming we get the same perspectives in book 2, and I would very much like to read that. Then I read Feybound. This was also a 4-star book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I read this so quickly, and I actually read most of it on audiobook, and the audiobook was also really good. I found like it really made it very easy to continue going with the plot, basically. Like, it's just very easy to consume, so I did like that. The only thing for me that stopped this being a 5-star was how obvious I found every like twist or reveal. Unfortunately, every single one I saw, so it just didn't 100% work for me. I am hoping that when I pick up book 2, because I will pick up the next book in the series, because I do really enjoy it, that it's just not quite as obvious what's going to happen. We get 2 perspectives in here. I like both of them. I like both of them got their own like romance subplot, but we really did just learn so much about the world. I do feel like, you know, there's a tiny little bit of this world that we didn't get to explore in this one. I'm not going to name it just in case that's a spoiler, but there's like the tiniest little bit to do with like this Fae part of the world that we're in that we didn't get to know much knowledge on. I'm hoping we get more knowledge on that in the second book, but apart from that, I feel pretty content with how much we know. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really happy I read it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, and yeah, I mean, I wrote a hell of a lot in my actual reading journal for this, but most of it's spoilers, so we're just gonna leave it like that. Then I picked up Honorifics. This is a tiny little poetry collection that I got not long ago, and I gave it 3 stars. There were some poems in here that I thought were 5-star poems, so I will definitely pick up more by the author. However, just a lot of them in here didn't work for me. So the ones that I really loved and were 5-star poems were Port Merion, Proxima B and Glitch Honorifics. But apart from that, not much stood out, unfortunately. None of it was bad, like there wasn't any of it that I disliked. But for me, with poetry collections, I really want to feel that emotional like tug, and I want to like feel those emotions that we were speaking about. And unfortunately, except for those 5-star poems that I've already said the names of, most of the others were just like, oh yeah, cool, good time. Then I started my reread of, I don't actually know what the series is called. I think it might be called the Mortal Fates series, but I'm not 100% sure. But I started my reread of that because book 2 was coming out. Book 2 has now been pushed back, so I haven't finished my reread of it because I've got like another 3 weeks, I think, until book 2 comes out. But I did reread the first novella in that, which is called The Scepter. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's really good. I definitely think the novellas are worth reading before going into the first main book of the series. We get to know a lot about the characters' backstory. In the first novella, Scepter, we follow Rook, who's one of our main characters, and we find out her backstory kind of like 200 years before book 1 starts. I also read The Sword, which I also gave 4 stars. I also really liked it. In this one, we do follow our other main character from the book 1, who is Soren or Soreen. I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce it. And this one got me more excited for like the first book in the series as well. Like, I think it was a good way to start it, because this takes place very close to the events of book 1. Like, I'm not sure exactly how close it is, but it's close. It feels like if you told me it was a week previous, I'd believe you. So yeah, I really thought this worked well. We didn't get to know that much about Soren as like an actual character, but we got to know a lot about his friends and a lot about like their setup, which I think would be helpful going into book 1. So yeah, that's that one. Then, as I said earlier, we went to an exhibit in London, and whilst we were there, we went to the like gift shop and we picked up a couple of books, and one of those books was Gender. This is part of the Take collection, and honestly this was amazing. I ended up reading it, all of it, on the train journey home, and I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. There's so many quotes, there's so many things that I've highlighted. There's so good. I don't really think I've got much to say, except for it was very interesting and it said a lot of things in ways that I'd never heard them said before. But I also think this collection is really cool. Obviously I've only read one of them, so I don't know about the other, but I believe there's about 12 books in the collection in whole. But at least for this one, so we're talking about art and the history of art, and then this one we're specifically looking at gender. And we like talk about that throughout, and it'll like tell you what's being said, but then it'll say like, yeah, the painting name, the whatever name it's talking about, and then in the back of it, it's all the like actual things that are being referenced throughout, and it was really, really cool, really interesting. And yeah, I definitely want to pick up more of this collection because I just found the entire like reading process of this so immersive. It worked really, really well for me. I gave it 5 stars. Got lots of quotes out of it, got lots of thoughts, and yeah, definitely one that will stick with me. Very tiny little non-fiction, but very, very good. Then I eventually got around to Mislaid in Parts Half Known. This is the latest book in the Wayward Children series. I gave it 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I think the Wayward Children series for me is just one of those where it's so good, and the more you read in it, the like more interesting this world becomes. In this book, we are following our main character Antsy, who is a main character that we got to see in a previous book. And for me, the reason why this one was so interesting is because from what we saw with Antsy in the previous book, she has a lot of knowledge of how things happen. I'm trying to be discreet, I don't want to say too much, but she has a lot of knowledge that we haven't followed anyone else having in these books. So there's just so much more that I feel like I learn about even like the worlds and how they work in this book than any other book previous, and it worked really, really well. I also think personally my personal favourites of the Wayward Children's books are when we are going on an adventure. We've got a group of people and we're going on an adventure, we're solving something, we're figuring something out, and that was the structure that this one took. This to me was kind of like the same as Beneath the Sugar Sky? Yeah, Beneath the Sugar Sky, how that one had that adventure tone. This is how this one felt for me as well. Then I read Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, and this was 4 stars. Honestly, like this series, the Bright Falls series I think it's called, is the best series, like the best romance series I've come across. They are the best romance books I've come across, and I feel like I could rate romance higher than this, but only if it doesn't have like the whole like miscommunication bullshit trope breakup before they get back together right at the very end of the book, which is in every romance I've ever tried. So I highly doubt I will find that, but if I ever do, that will probably be what will get the higher rating. But yeah, this one did everything that I liked. It was dual point of view, it was interesting, there was more going on than the actual romance subplot. There was like something else the characters were actually working towards. This is the second book in the Bright Falls series, and obviously we already know some of the characters quite well, and we also get to see sneak peeks of like how things ended at the end of last book. Like this takes part about a year later I believe, so very, very interesting, and had a great time. If you enjoy romance, if you like romance books, this is definitely a series I'd recommend. So that's that one. Also, one I eventually got to was The Last Devil to Die. I gave this 4 stars. I did really, really like it. Like, it was really good. However, for me, I think it was potentially personally a bit overhyped for me. Like, I've loved all the books in this series. It's an amazing series. I would recommend it to literally everyone. However, book 4, it came out about 6 months ago now, I want to guess. I think it came out September time, so like 6, 7, 8 months, like it's somewhere around that time. And all I've heard of everyone who's read this, like both online and like in my own like personal life, everyone cried. Everyone said it was so emotional, it was like a gut punch, it really got to you, and it didn't do that for me. So yeah, unfortunately only 4 stars, but I do think that like on a reread it could get higher rating when my expectations are set correctly, because the other books in this series have all got higher ratings than a 4 stars, and I do think it's a great addition to the series, and it does continue on the story, and we do get to see more of the characters that we absolutely love. So yeah, absolutely great time. Then I also read Plain Bad Heroines, and this one and the previous 3 books I've spoken about will all be talked about in a vlog that will be coming soon. When it is out, I will link it up above. I think it'll be like in a 1 or 2 videos time I'll get that one out. So I read Plain Bad Heroines. I've given it 3 stars, and it's a disappointing 3 stars because it started out so good, it started out so strong, but look how long this is, look how long this is, and it just did not need to be. To be honest, I don't know how much of this is spoilers, but I don't know how else to really talk about it, so let's just see what I can say. It started out strong. I really liked the writing and the way it really made you feel the ambience and the spooky parts. I also found when reading it made it so easy to keep me reading longer. Unfortunately, this didn't actually do much. A lot of it was just vibes and a rough plot, and it was way too long for what it did do. I think it would have been 100 pages shorter, or maybe even more, I wouldn't have got so annoyed and could have rated it higher. Even though it was so long, it seemed to skip over, okay, that's getting into spoilers. Basically, for how long it was, I felt like we should have known more, we should have done more. There was a lot of things that intrigued me that we never got to see, we never got resolved. There's a lot of things that just happen and with vibes. I don't know. I didn't dislike it, but I was disappointed. Like, I would say the first half of this I was loving, but I don't know what happened. And then the final 3 books that I read during the month of April were the first 3 books in the Zodiac Academy. So that is The Awakening, Ruthless Fae and The Reckoning. The Awakening I gave 4 stars. Ruthless Fae I gave 4 stars, and The Reckoning I gave 4 stars, so all 4 stars, all great. The Reckoning was definitely my favourite of them, but not by too much, but we just got to see so much more in that one. I really don't know how to talk about this one, to be honest. Everything I've wrote for myself is all spoilers. Like, I've wrote so much and there's so much interesting stuff. Like, I do really like this series, but I don't know how to talk about it without spoilers. And I also understand that not everyone will like this series, and I also understand the people who say like give it a go until like book 4 or book 5, because at the end of book 4, if that doesn't get you, don't bother reading it. But I think from book 1 to book 4, it's just such an arc, it's such a thing, it really gets you so much that it's just like if you like it even a little bit, keep going. But yeah, I don't know, I like the world, I like the magic system, I like all of our characters, I really like this series. It's not the best written, but it's a great time, so that's all I can really say about it, to be honest. But yeah, I read books 1, 2 and 3 of that, and they all got 4 stars. I am still reading it, so you'll hear a lot more about this in my May wrap up, and I'll try and figure out at least a few non-spoiler things to say about each book, but for now I think I'm just going to leave it at that. That was everything that I read during April. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I've been recording for over half an hour, so hopefully I've at least managed to edit it down slightly, but this is probably one of my longer wrap-ups. I don't know how I read so much. I'm not complaining, but I think if this reading speed continues, I will rethink how I do these wrap-ups, because I shortened it down a lot today and it still feels like I've been talking for ages. So yeah, I do really hope that you enjoyed it. Please do give it a like if you did like it. Subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!